Hi, I'm Mike Guy, Editor-in-Chief of R&T. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're here at the Classic Car Club in Manhattan. Not only is this a beautiful setting with some incredible cars, including this Lotus Evora 400 behind me, it gets me out of my home office where I've been essentially a prisoner since mid-March. This club is also a great example of some of the exclusive partner benefits and offerings you can receive as a newly minted R&T Trek Club member. And we'll talk a little more about that later. So today is our launch day. We're not just launching R&T, which is a new premium lifestyle magazine in the Hearst Autos family, aimed at what we like to call super auto enthusiasts or auto super enthusiasts. We're also launching a new brand. It's super exciting for us. And I'm gonna be taking some questions at the end of the interview, this interview. So feel free to post something in the Q&A on your screen. Before that, I am lucky to be joined today by some of the very talented contributors who worked very hard to help us put together this first volume, which is a really beautiful 155-page page turner about cars and car culture and the lifestyle of cars and everything we love about cars. Joining me is AJ Baim, Editor-at-Large, our executive editor, Daniel Pund, Mark McCluskey, a contributing writer, and Tim Struby, also a contributing writer. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Quickly, before we jump in, hearing about what you did in your to report in this first volume, let me quickly tell everybody about something really special about R&T that I think is super unique, and that's the R&T Track Club, which is a membership program and something that's something we're really kicking off exceptionally well, I think. So there are 3 tiers to it. The first one is the Paddock tier. The Paddock tier member receives 6 issues of R&T. We'll be putting out 6 a year with unlimited digital access to all the content. And there is a lot of that. These collector's editions that we're going to be printing will bring you exciting automotive and lifestyle content every other month. The grid tier is the next tier, and you get, with this, you get all access to print and digital plus monthly virtual experiences, early access to all live events, a welcome gift, which is very cool, and dozens of discounts, perks, and partner benefits. And finally, our founders tier, which is the top tier, it's truly the inner circle, and it comes with lots of enhanced benefits. Everything that's in the Paddock and Grid tier, plus multiple opportunities to connect as a community and join R&T editors at automotive events in our region and around the world. So that's super awesome. That's our membership program now. The unveiling of the first volume of R&T, we're going to start with the cover, which is pretty awesome, and here it is. Yeah, this is actually a story that we'll get into in a second. It's AJ Baim's reporting on the untold story of the single most valuable car on earth, the Ferrari 250 GTO, and it is the cover of the first themed issue of R&T, which is motorsports. So everything in this issue will be about motorsports, and every issue subsequently will be a different theme, and they're all very exciting. We're planning them all out, and I can guarantee they're going to knock your socks off. R&T is going to be building on the 73-year legacy of Road and Track. It's an entirely new magazine, and it'll create a premium keepsake. That's what we're going after. This part lifestyle publication, part art book. It's something you're going to want to put on your coffee table. It's something you're going to put in your bookcase when you're done reading it, because you're going to want to keep returning to it. We have a lot of stuff, 155 edit pages, plus a bunch of other pages on really nice stock of paper, and it's glossy and it's beautiful. And since I have all these great contributors with us today who went all around the world to report on this, I wanted to bring in our executive editor, Dan Pund, to touch on a quick feature that he wrote. He basically edited the entire magazine, I'll be honest. But this first one is a high performance. And before you begin, Dan, I will say that this magazine is super graphically driven. It's photographically driven and story driven. And I think that one of the reasons we chose this is because we kind of liked the spirit of the piece and the fact that it's graphically driven. But Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I mean, as you say, I traveled all the way to my living room for this particular piece. These are people that I was familiar with for a long time, and the idea behind the story, as you say, is it's supposed to be a really graphic piece. And what's the best graphics in motorsports? It's race car liveries, right? But we didn't want to do just it's a pretty one. That's a the ones that everyone had seen before. So we struck on this idea of using the liveries, in other words, the color combinations and graphic combinations of cars that were paid for by drug smuggling or drug selling, of which there are quite a number in racing over the years, particularly in the 1980s in endurance racing.
I mean, there were a lot that we discovered. This is sort of a distilling of the most compelling ones that were almost driven by how beautiful the cars ended up being,
Yeah,
as
that's
much
right.
as anything else.
Yeah, yeah. There are a ton. It's sort of shocking, and so we've narrowed it down to 6 of what I think are the most compelling little vignettes, compelling little stories of bad people or good people doing bad things, and incredible looking race cars.
And also some good racers. I mean, we have the Whittingtons, Randy Lanier. We don't want to get too far into it, but
right. And
you also, yeah.
who those guys, those are no joke racers. I mean, these were talented guys. John Paul Jr. Had a really promising career in Indy cars. Randy Lanier was an Indy 500 Rookie of the Year in '86. So these were legitimate racers. This is not just the guy down the street who is paying for his Lemmons car with weed sales.
Yeah. Speaking of racers, you also you drove the McLaren Senna for this. It's a $1.1 million special car.
Yeah, it's a little bit special. This one is 1.1 million because of things like a $60,000 satin finished carbon fiber roof and $1,800 accelerator pedal, and it's quite a special piece. It is like it's like an automotive Fabergé egg in a way, and that's I took it down to the old downtown Detroit Grand Prix circuit, which was run in the 80s from 82 until 88. And Ayrton Senna was the absolute king of that track. He took the last 3 races. He won the last 3 races, and the last one in one of the best or most memorable McLarens ever, which was the MP44. And so I decided to take this car and sort of retrace that old track, which on a Sunday morning is pretty clear. But still utterly and completely terrifying because the car is not subtle. Ours was purple with gold accents, so it's like a Crown Royal bag. And getting any, I was just constantly paranoid about the car, but it performed really well, and I think it came out good.
Awesome. And there's a bunch of other cars that we drove and reviewed in here, including the Renault Alpine, and the 911 Turbo S and the Taycan Turbo S. So it's a lot more to talk about, but we don't really have time. And I'm going to move on to Tim Struby, a journalist who we sent to Cape Town along with photographer Alex Tarani right before the world closed down. And you were reporting on illegal street racing. Tell me, what was that like?
Barely. And it's funny because we think of street racing in the States and Europe and Asia, but we wanted to find a place where street racing was unlikely. And I didn't think that we would find a lot of spots in the world where, it's not car culture, and we did. And Cape Town has this incredibly vibrant and very kind of nuanced streetcar culture where you have the upper class racing souped up M3s, and then you have guys who are racing 82 Toyota Corollas that they're putting in 20 valve engines in, and it's a really fascinating dynamic look into the culture and the car culture as well.
It's interesting how, the more you dug into it, you realize that there's this face-off between these guys and a bunch of policemen who are dedicated to shutting them down called the Ghost Squad.
Yes.
It's a really great scene and a great story, and the photos were fantastic. And I think it's, you know, something we're going to be doing at RNT is touching all points of the globe with each of these issues and each of these themes. But thanks, Tim. I'm going to move on now to our friend Mark McCluskey. And Mark, we convinced, we willingly, maybe, I don't know if you were willing or unwilling, we forced you to go to Australia to cover the Australian Grand Prix in a very at a very dubious moment. The world was wondering if this was going to happen. And you got to, it seems like you got to really look inside a lot of soul searching at Formula One as to whether or not they should start the season or not.
Yeah, I mean, the story really turned into kind of a parallel version of my personal soul searching and Formula One's soul searching on how to handle a situation that nobody, you know, people talked about the novel coronavirus. It definitely seemed novel at the time. Nobody really knew how to handle it. And so it was a sport that really was insisting that everything was going to be fine, and then realizing that it was not at all going to be fine, and what happened after that.
Did you, when you were there, did you sense that there was this one turning? I know that Lewis spoke up and said, what the heck are we doing here?
There, you know, I arrived sort of on Thursday, and Thursday afternoon are traditionally the press conferences, the driver press conferences at a Grand Prix. And Lewis came in with Ricardo and Vettel and sat down on couches, and we're all packed in this room. And Lewis looked out, Lewis Hamilton, and said, I don't understand why we're here. And I think everybody went like, why are we here anyway? Hold on a second. You know, and I think that's something you've seen him do not only through the coronavirus, but now through sort of like Black Lives Matter, is his stature and status in the sport allows him a voice and a platform that I think really made a huge difference in this situation.
Yeah. It's a great story. I really appreciate you sticking your neck out and hanging there in Australia, despite the fact you desperately wanted us to bring you home.
Everything worked out.
Yeah. AJ Bain, a guy I've known for many, many years, is editor-at-large here and at RNT. I don't know if you can hear the whistling. Something's happening behind us here at the car club, but something is always happening, usually an engine starting. AJ, you did a great oral history on the 1999 Le Mans and the Mercedes CLR's travails there, the Airborne travails. You talked to Mark Webber, Peter Dumbrecht, various other folks from Mercedes. What was the takeaway from that?
Well, the takeaway was this. I mean, if I can think of the most surprising and most shocking thing I've ever seen in motorsport, it is Peter Dumbrecht's car, the CLR Mercedes, doing 4 back flips, taking flight apropos of nothing, to quote Stephen Crane. There was no explaining this. A car going down a straight, a live television camera directed, pointing right at it, and inexplicably, it takes flight and does 4 back flips, disappears over some telephone wires and some woods. And so we really wanted to get inside of Peter's head and find out what that experience was like for him. But once we started doing that, we realized that there was really an epic story to tell that fit into an amazing sort of narrative arc, where almost like, cinematic arc, where there's this amazing beginning and middle and end. It almost unfolds like a police procedural, like a murder mystery without the murder.
I mean, the car flew 3 times over the course of the weekend, and Mercedes persisted on pushing forward to that 3rd time. They finally pulled the plug.
Well, they did. And really what we focused in on the end, we interviewed 3 drivers, Mark Webber, Christophe Bouchou, and Dumbrecht. And we really sort of focus on this rookie. He shows up. It's the biggest moment in his life. And here he is. He gets to race at Le Mans. He's finally with a pro team. He's been working for this all his life. And during warm-ups, a car that he's supposed to be driving inexplicably takes flight. And they try to figure out what's going on. They think they have it figured out. Now it's qualifying. And what do you know? Another car takes flight. And now Peter Dumbrecht, the biggest moment in his life, has to go out there. They decide to put the car on the grid, and off he goes. And he's actually in 3rd place, moving into 2nd, live television cameras. And The car somersaults 4 times, and nobody believes that he can survive this. So it was really kind of a kick to be able to get into his head and experience it through him.
Yeah. It's a crazy story. I think there's one more image here that shows sort of, oh, maybe not. That's cool. AJ, stay on the line. You wrote the cover story. The single most valuable car on earth, the Ferrari 250 GTO. This is Chip Connor's GTO that we managed to dragoon down to Laguna Seca and shoot. And you wrote a kind of fascinating look that, you know, all the car folks that I had read it, like really kind of were like, ah, this is a really good story. I know Dan, who hates all stories until he edits them. He actually liked the draft of this. Tell us a little bit about this car. And I mean, we all know it's so special, but why is it so, I mean, why did McNeil pay $70 million for it?
So look, the most expensive car ever sold in a private sale, over $70 million, is a Ferrari 250 GTO. The most expensive car ever sold at auction is a Ferrari 250 GTO. The second most expensive car ever sold at auction is a Ferrari 250 GTO. So I never read the story of how that happened, and I wanted to tell that story, but I wanted to do more than that. So there's really 3 parts of the story, and every one of them is so hard to believe, it's inexplicable. The story of how this car came into being, I don't think even most Ferrari nerds realize how that happened and how it became a world beater. The degree to which it became completely obscure. We found these classified ads, all these classified ads of GTOs for sale for $3,500 in the early 70s. And then finally, how that car became something worth over $70 million.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. Well, thanks. Thanks, everybody. Stay on the line. I think we're going to be taking questions. But first, you know, throughout the year, I want to reiterate, we'll be hosting lots of live events and virtual experiences such as this Inside Track episode. And we'll, so far we have planned an exclusive tour of the Ferrari factory in Maranello, Italy, as well as an insider's journey to the Japanese Grand Prix. We'll also be hosting lots of driving rallies. Some are multi-days, some are single days. We'll be holding discussion and debates on the most fascinating topics with some of the most influential people in our world, including the next Inside Track is going to be me and the King, Richard Petty, chatting. So stay tuned for that in early September. And yeah, so now I think we'll be happy to take some questions. The first one I'm seeing here from Sardar in San Antonio, Texas. Of all the incredible cars featured in this issue, which one would you most want parked in your garage? I gotta go with we did both Porsche turbos, the Taycan Turbo S and the 911 Turbo S. I'm gonna have to go with the 911 Turbo S, despite the beauty of that 250 GTO and the resale value, I assume. I'm gonna go with a turbo. I don't know, Dan, what would you do?
That's a good question. You know, it probably wouldn't be the Senna as compelling as it is, because you just wouldn't get an opportunity to use it as much as you might like. It's really a track car. I would probably go for a Renault Alpine, the old one, like a 65 or so.
The Berlin, yeah.
110, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we have a really great story about the new Alpine, which is not available in the U.S. We went to France, and Jamie Kintman did a long piece about driving around Lyon and up in the mountains in that car, and went really deep on how that car was made and how it came to be and how we're not going to get it. Yeah, it's exciting. Dan, speaking of you, Felix in Boston, Massachusetts wonders, how does the Senna compare to other supercars you've driven?
That's a good question. It's probably louder. It's probably more vibratory. It pings a lot more. It really is a track car. I mean, they've sort of gotten to the end of that performance envelope where, you know, if you have a McLaren 720, it is an impossibly fast car. I mean, its acceleration above 100 miles per hour is completely absurd. but also comfortable. What they've basically done with this is taken the attractive bodywork off, put bodywork on. It's maybe less attractive to the human eye, but more attractive to the atmosphere. And then just taken out all the sound deadening, all the carpet, so it is a very raw experience, and it's distinct, and I think very exciting for it. It's just it's not one to live with for a long time.
And a little aside about that, I know you just have a couple minutes left, but while you were driving it, a teenager drove a bird scooter, an electric bird scooter, into the $275,000 diffuser.
That's true. I was totally cool with that, by the way. I was freaked out. I was freaked out as I was the whole time. They gave it for a week, and
yes,
and I watched her in the rearview mirror because I was sitting there in the air conditioning, trying not to like boil over in Midwest summer heat, and I watched her unsteadily sort of approach. Boom, center punched it. So no damage. Knocked the plate off, and that was it. It was just held on by Velcro. So all was well.
Everybody wins.
As well.
Yes. So Tina from Ann Arbor, Michigan, is wondering, Mark, what do you think of Formula One's handling of the COVID crisis in general? It's an interesting question, as they're sort of struggling to put a season together.
Yeah, I think that they, when the decision was finally made to shut things down in Australia and reconfigure the schedule, I think they've worked really hard to find a season and are managing to put together some pretty compelling racing. Mercedes' sort of ongoing dominance notwithstanding, it certainly makes the races interesting when the tires start exploding 3 laps from the finish, as they did last weekend at Silverstone. I think they've been careful. I think they've done a good job. There are just so many people involved and so much travel, and trying to keep that bubble tight. We saw Sergio Perez tested positive and had to sit out last weekend, is going to sit out this weekend, it appears, and gives Nico Hulkenberg another ride, at least for another week, and we'll see what he can do with it. So, overall,
off the start line.
If he can get to the start line with a running car, that would be helpful for him. But overall, I think they've done as good a job as any of the big international sports. It's just such a logistical nightmare for them.
Yeah. I mean, there are multiple ships traveling all around the country, and including as well as dozens of airplanes.
Yeah, all over the world. It's crazy.
I've been wondering. I wonder how the challenges they're facing affect the performance of the cars. Are there engineering challenges that we don't know about? I mean, I think
a thing we've seen, obviously, is pushing back. There were new regulations that were scheduled to come in for next season that they've pushed back a year, which in some ways is too bad, because I think those new regulations are a more stable foundation for the future. And I think it's going to just mean another year of like Mercedes crushing everybody. But, it has, I think, given everybody a little time to try. Most of the teams had decided they weren't going to try and improve this year's cars, particularly. They were already on to next year's cars because it was all new spec, and it gives them sort of more cycles to work on this particular formula.
Yeah. Thank you, Mark. We have a question from Bob. I'm not sure where Bob is from, perhaps New York. Will you ever have an issue dedicated to off-road enthusiasts that features rock bouncers and geo trackers? Thank you, Bob. You're kind of close to something.
Hope so.
Something. We are considering an issue devoted to overlanding and getting lost. Reporting this magazine in the middle of the coronavirus has been kind of interesting and so different, because what we generally do is send suckers like Mark and Tim to faraway places where they get stranded and have to work their way back. But now we have to sort of work around that, but also, we want to have a global reach. So yes, is the answer. I think we're going to be probably not dealing with geo trackers, but going off-road. I think we want to do an issue devoted to overlanding and like the crazy technology, and also this is an opportunity for us to really go deep on road trips, but actually go deep on off-road trips. And sort of, again, keep our DNA intact.
Yeah, Mike, if you want me to race in the Baja 1000 again, I will, because the first time was challenging. But yes.
I think you got to get in line for that. One quick note, Richard Petty is actually Wednesday, September 2nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So tune into the next episode of Inside Track for that. And with that, I think I want to say thank you to everybody. And also, before we go, super important, you want to be a member of this. It's really cool. It's really good. It's new. So you want to go to roadandtrack.com/join and you want to sign up. There are 3 different tiers appropriate for all folks out there. And if you have kids, there's also R&T Crew, which is a new brand that we're doing aimed at younger kids. I'm just going to throw that in there. Nobody told me to. I just love it. My girls love it. And with that, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike, for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.